Hey, this is DJ. This is Kaz. We're buried above ground, and this is Speak the Devil podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 29 of the Speak of the Devil podcast. I just want to give you a quick show update. I'm going to try to do the podcast on a more regular basis, hopefully on Sundays, releasing them. It's been pretty sporadic, in the last couple of years, so just going to kind of get a more consistent schedule. So, I'll still try to, if I can, in between interview bands, that roll through town and that kind of thing. But I think going forward to keep this consistency, we're going to kind of keep it a solo show just with me, so that way I can keep up with the pace of it. So there you go. So let's get on with it. So in terms of music for this week, I had to talk about Metallica. And Metallica they've just announced some new dates, which is surprising that they're announcing anything, because James Hetfield is in rehab again. So we don't know why. Obviously, nothing good. And definitely, as a big fan, everybody's wishing him the best. But it's just odd that they would. And I know I've heard things saying that these things are set in motion way far in advance of any of this being announced, him going into rehab. But the last time he came out, it was almost like Metallica didn't even survive. So it's interesting that they're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse and saying, well, he'll be fine by then. So, I mean, hopefully it was just a small stint of relapse and he'll be fine. So we'll see. Also recently saw these guys. I'll show you the poster here. Ghost, the ultimate tour named Death, at Huntington Center here in Toledo. Very, very good show. Actually had pit passes, so towards the end of the show, actually able to be right up in front and see him, front row, which was great. Very, very well lit and all that kind of stuff. So the sound was great. So A+ show. So that was very fun. And then finally got in other music related releases. Steel Panther just released Heavy Metal Rules, I think about 2-3 weeks ago or something, and it rules. It's great. I mean, the last couple albums I wasn't so into. The last album I really liked was Balls Out, which is the tour that we saw them on. And this is kind of returning to that kind of. It's a little more edgy, so songs like "Fuck Everybody," songs like that. But highly recommended. Always a good time if they blow back into town. Maybe we'll see them. Who knows? Okay, so moving on to video games. With video games, I'd like to kind of do a little bit of a review of this little guy right here, the Nintendo Switch Lite, which is interesting in the fact that the Joy-Cons do not come off and you can't hook it up to a TV. So I don't so much mind the Joy-Cons not being able to detach because it feels really good in your hands, but not being able to hook up to a TV it's almost a deal breaker, but not entirely. I'm going to take it on a trip to London, and we'll see how that is. I didn't really want to take the full setup with power adapters and all that kind of stuff. Who knows, what'll happen. So this thing is just real easy to charge. I even got a portable battery for it on the plane. And then there's another guy right here. This little guy. Just got this yesterday. This is the Pocket Go by Bittboy, and pretty interesting. It comes preloaded with a lot of emulators. The one that I really am going to try to get later today and on next week, maybe I can update, is a Sega CD emulator. I really, really loved Sega CD back in the day. Probably one of my favorite systems, but it's really hard to collect for because, the discs are old, they're scratchy. If you even get a system, then odds are the laser's going to need to be repaired, and some games like Snatcher run for like $200, like in the box. So, this kind of gives you a chance to go down memory lane for $40. But so we'll see. I have to load some software onto it before we can actually, give it a full demo. And finally, we'll move on to wrestling. So, interesting, last time on the podcast, it was right before AEW launched Dynamite. And now Dynamite is out on Wednesdays, going head-to-head with NXT. And I think the numbers that I saw, it's about almost more than half. Like, I think it was something like 400,000 viewers on NXT and then like 800 or so for AEW. Granted, two different products, because NXT is like their minor leagues, which now they're trying to like not make it minor league and try to make it like its own brand, just as strong as SmackDown or Raw, as they just had the NXT invade SmackDown. So we'll see what happens with that. But AEW is a very interesting alternative. It really does feel like the old Nitro days. I mean, it's on the same station. It has almost the same look and feel. You got Tony Schiavone back, who hasn't been announcing in almost 20 years. And then, of course, Jim Ross, which is great. And they let both of them kind of have a little more edge. And, like, I think they were allowed to throw a couple swear words in on the live broadcast. So, obviously they're pushing an old horse with Chris Jericho being their champion, but you got to kind of go with somebody. Hopefully it doesn't seem like it's going to evolve like WCW did, where they just took WWF talent and made them kind of big there, like the NWO and all that. It seems like they're doing their own thing, although Chris Jericho already has a faction just like the NWO. So I don't know. It's like, and so does NXT, which that's what I'm talking about with Finn Balor. He's I mean, like I said, I guess you could look at it as like going down to the minor leagues, but it's not. It's like now he's, like I said, it's like a third brand. So, and with that, we got a heel turn. So now he's, his former character, I think, was like Prince Devitt in some other promotion, I think New Japan or something like that, when he went bad. So that's coming back. I don't know if the Devitt character, but the persona, the attitude, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. If he's going to do the paint or some different type of paint, or if he's done with all that kind of stuff. Who knows? But it's always interesting to see. And I guess the last thing would be the Crown Jewel review. Interesting. I would say of all the Saudi Arabia shows, certainly the best. It seems like they're starting to get it a little bit that you can't just make these glorified house shows. Something has to happen, some story-wise, like, what I mean. And they did. So The Fiend is now the champ, which, I'm not a big fan of lighting the entire arena red while they fight, but, it is what it is. It sells the gimmick, I guess. I didn't really like the Cain Velasquez, and I'm not even sure about Tyson Fury. I missed that one. I think I stepped out because the pay-per-view is at 1 o'clock here on a Thursday, which was weird. So, you're trying to work and do stuff, and then kind of in the background, maybe take a peek and then watch the replay later. But it's getting better. They had the first, women's match, which, they were fully clothed, they didn't have to wear like headdresses or anything like that, but full leggings and armings, and then equal T-shirts. So they almost looked identical except for their T-shirts. But, it's the first time women have ever, I guess, been able to publicly perform like in sporting events or something like that. So I guess it was worth the compromise with the wardrobe. And, it was a good match. So, yeah, I mean, they're starting to get it, but it's with the wrestling wars are almost heating up a little bit, because AEW is definitely real competition with real money, and now they're starting to get some fans too. So the competition is good. I mean, back in the Nitro days, you really did have two different great shows to watch, and they were good. And then all you had after that, when that imploded, was Impact Wrestling, which was awful. and using a bunch of old stars. I mean, I think Kurt Angle was their champion for years. I mean, that was their bedrock with him. Now I think it's like on some streaming channel that you can only find, in the depths of Arkansas or something like that. I don't know. I don't watch it. You can't. So there you go. It'll be interesting, like I said, to see how this all plays out. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's just more stuff for the fans to watch. So there you go. Kind of a short one today, but like I said, as we're going to try to do these weekly and get back on more of a schedule. So, next week maybe we'll have a bit longer discussion. But for now, that is it for episode 29 of the Speak of the Devil podcast. See you next time.